Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a second submission by Liz of her horse Ellie. Ellie's a 10-year-old Lipizzan mare that she's had since she was 4. And now she's trying to get her over her back, and what a good job she's doing here. Now, this was a second piece of tape that Liz sent after the fact, saying she didn't think that the horse had quite gotten there in the previous tape, which we're going to see in a few moments. But she was absolutely right. This is more what we're looking for. This tape is really good. And the difference between this section and the section that's going to come after it is night and day, in that in this section she's over her back, and in the other section she never quite gets there. So this is what we want to be looking for. So this is really good. You see how in this section the horse is really stretching out, stretching the whole length of the neck, and you can really see how she's stretching, as I call it, from the base of the shoulders there, and really reaching and pulling that withers up. That's so important. Once again, remembering that it takes about a 2-year process of correct training for a horse's body to develop as it should. That is, to develop its top line, but also for the withers to pull up through the shoulders, which is what all this stretching does, and gives your horse a much more uphill appearance. As we even see in this little video, this little video section that we're going to see before we see the other one almost looks like a different horse to me, and shows me the difference between the horse working over its back and when it's not. So this is really, really good. Good swinging walk, good stretch in that walk, really good length in the neck, and a more active hindquarters that shows a little more flexion in the hocks, which is what we're looking for in this horse. And of course, that can only happen correctly when the horse is working over its back, or that is to its optimal degree. But this is really good. I like how you're keeping the horse at the end of the line. You're doing a great job with your lunging. And we can see in this, as she stretches down, the more she stretches down, the looser and softer she becomes, more active behind. That's really good. Now, where we have her here is really good. This is where we need to get to. If you don't get to here, she's not going to develop anything. But this is excellent. Some good rhythm, really good stretching down. She could maybe swing a little more actively still from here, but this is really good. This is the start of something really, really good. So excellent work here. Now we're going to see the tape that came before this. Now, once again, I wouldn't do too much of that cantering with this horse. Not quite ready for that yet. Get back in that deep stretch the way you had her a moment ago, and that's where you want to stay. Now, this is the little section of tape that she did before that one. And while it's not bad, it just doesn't quite get the horse to the same place that we got in the other one. We can see how kind of she braces upwards, and if you compare the two pieces of tape, you'll see in this one her belly looks like it's hanging down further, her back actually looks like it's sagging a little more, and she's just not quite active enough and stretching enough. She's not really reaching from the base of that neck. As you said, she's been going up for a long time, so as I said, it takes a while for these changes to take place and for them to stay consistent. But we can just see here she's not really swinging. Once again, if you compare this with the first little bit of video, her hocks aren't working in as round a circle. She's not reaching under her body as much. She's not stretching as deep into the contact. So whether she was a little tense this day or what, I'm not quite sure. Or is it that she works better without the side reins? If you find that she works better without the side reins, by all means leave them off. Because that is really our goal, is to get to the point where we can lunge horses without side reins. As soon as I can do that, I don't want to use them anymore, because I don't want the side reins to curl the horse back at all, which they always do to some degree. So by having nothing on the horse at all, the horse is able to stretch down and out further. However, in the beginning, sometimes we have to use the side reins or the shambone or whatever the case may be to begin to encourage the horse to stretch and seek that contact. So once again, this is getting a little better as we're going here. It's just never on this tape quite. It started to stretch a little bit more there. But you can just see, once again, you just have a little bit more sense of that the horse is just, his belly is hanging down here a little more. The back looks a little more dropped to me. She isn't quite coming through like there. And see how short the stride is behind, barely even tracking up into the track of her front feet. She's not, in fact, she's not even doing that. But in your previous tape, she does. So that's what tells you you're on the right track. Now, I'd be curious to know if that other little bit of lunging was just a separate day, or just something that you pushed her a little more and made her a little more active. So whatever you did to get the second tape, that is what the first one on this on this submission, that's what you want to do. Because what we're seeing here, she's pretty much just going around kind of hollow, not really coming through. So my initial thing to say to you there is I'd send her on a little bit. She tends to want to break, it seems like, when you send her on. And when the horse does that, what you want to do is bring the horse onto a smaller circle. Remember, we always use a smaller circle to discipline the horse rather than jerking on the reins. We only want to ever pull on that rein to stop the horse in extreme cases, that is, her pulling out or trying to drag you around the arena, such things like that. A little more active here. A little bit better stretch. That's a little better there, more like what we're looking for, but still not quite as good as that other little piece of tape. So it tells me that she's capable of getting there, and now the thing for you to do, now that you can compare these two tapes, is really look at the difference in the horse, and that's where we've got to get to every day, because that's our goal of training. We must get horses over their backs every day if they're going to improve. Now, that doesn't mean in the beginning that we can do that every day. Sometimes we can achieve it and sometimes we can't. But usually once you begin to achieve it, it's not very difficult because, of course, we're showing the horse a more comfortable position to carry its body in and to carry our weight. So that's why horses don't resist correct training, because we're not trying to cram them into a box they can't fit into. You know, in terms of, you know, I hear people using terms like, you know, packaging horses and fixing horses and these things. You know, these are things we do to products, and fixing is something we save for our pipes, you know. When it comes to a horse, the only thing we can do that's going to have any real lasting value is to develop them over time. The only real big improvement you can make in a horse in any single day is to get them over their back. That is, you can take a horse that's never been over its back and get it to stretch down and begin to work over its back. That's the biggest improvement in a day we can ever make in any horse. Everything else comes quite slowly by constantly reestablishing that contact through the back, swing through the back, contact with the bit, correctly stretching into it. Those things take time. But the beauty is that if we get the horse over its back every day, and you'll be amazed at how quickly the horse will begin to change shape once we can begin to get the horse to work over its back on a daily basis. This is a little better here, once again, than it was. This is getting closer to what we look for, but still not quite as good as it is in that first section. Nice transition coming back to the walk there. It's also interesting that you have a Lipizzan mare. Most people may or may not know the Spanish riding school never used mares. They used them only for breeding. So, the point I'm bringing this up is just like all other kinds of horses. You know, the reason that they don't use them so much at the Spanish riding school because their conformation is slightly different than the male of the variety, in that the male's neck comes more straight up out of the shoulders. It's built more uphill. All mares are generally of any breed, tend to have a more straight out neck position than do the males of the species. And the Lipizzaners are very much that way. So now, once again, as I talk about with all other horses, does that mean that the horse is not going to be able to collect? No, it means that its head and neck is simply going to be in a different position. So it's, again, the biggest mistake people make is trying to imitate head and neck position on various horses rather than what they're doing behind. All horses, to a greater or lesser degree, depending on the straightness of their hindquarters, can get underneath themselves. But in terms of their position of their neck, that's a whole different thing. So like you see with this mare, her neck is more like a thoroughbred horse. The neck comes more straight out of the body than a male Lipizzan would have. I'm working one right now here in San Diego and to the difference in the conformation, it just struck me that, of course, that's why they just use the males of the variety for riding over there. Now, that doesn't mean, once again, that you can't. I think this is a beautiful horse, and once again, you just have to remember that this horse can't look exactly like a male of the species because it doesn't have that same head and neck position. That is, the neck coming more straight out of the shoulders with a bigger sloping shoulder. But really good work here, but once again, as I said, compare this to what we saw in the first little stretch of video there. We can even see standing here how she looks a little more distended through her belly here. And a little more dropped in the back, and you can see standing there even, she's a little more U-necked standing there. She hasn't quite released those muscles underneath. But in that first little video, you really got her out long, and the difference is night and day between how this horse looks. Getting ready to go. Here, I like to see that it looks like you're giving her a little something there. That's good. I'm a big believer, you know, when horses are standing quiet in the ring and doing their work, giving them an occasional treat of some kind or other. I personally use sugar cubes, but you can use all these various other forms. I like sugar cubes because they disappear in the horse's mouth and they also activate the salivary glands. And they don't create a lot of mess inside the horse's mouth. And of course, horses love them. You know, I have had people say to me, well, you know, aren't you worried about the horse getting diabetes or something? But, you know, I guarantee you there's more sugar in 10 times more in a cup of Alpha Mo or something like that people feed their horses than there is in a sugar cube. So I wouldn't worry about that. But as I said, as I always like to say, you know, to me it seems like, you know, there always has to be something a little in it for the horse. You know, people who deny giving the horse anything at all in the ring, you know, I think are missing a good opportunity to get the horse to focus on them a little more, and also to show the horse that, you know, there's something good in this riding for them. You know, I've heard people tell me, oh, you should never give horses treats because, you know, they have to work and they have to be ahead of your leg and it's different. Well, you know, still getting them to go along with the project is very helpful. So a couple of pieces of something in the ring, a piece of carrot, a sugar, whatever the case may be. Of course, only when they're standing still and quiet. You know, you never want to give a horse something that's begging, you know, it's begging for treats all the time, or you know, molesting you with its mouth every time it gets near you. You know, I give my horses a treat only, and I usually give it when I'm standing right in front of them also, so that if I'm working on the side of them, they're not looking for treats and that sort of thing. So when they're standing only absolutely still and quiet, I give them a treat standing in front of them. It's a small little point, but it makes a difference in you know, if you give too many treats, you know, the horses will start mauling you for them. So once again, we only do that when the horse is standing still and quiet. And of course, as training goes on, you know, maybe not so many, but with a young horse that you're just bringing in, or a horse that's fearful, you know, that has become fearful of the rider or being ridden and work, you know, a little bit of something goes a long way to helping them understand that, hey, this is going to be pretty good out here. You know, there's not that we're not going to hurt you, and there are good things in the ring, as well as just being, you know, pushed and pushed and pushed. So here, once again, we see a pretty good stretch with the horse, but not quite as good as what we saw in that first video. Once again, look how short she's tracking and how little flexion there is in the hocks in this, even though she's starting to stretch a little bit. And it's quite inconsistent, whereas in that first little stretch of video, she really gets good for you and really stretches. Now, that's very normal, you know, that the horse wants to break into a canter rather than give you a good trot. You know, when she does that, I would just bring her into a little bit smaller circle and bring her back to the trot. You did just there. Good. From what I see here at the canter, I would not do much cantering with this horse. She's pretty hollow when you canter her. So I would stick the cantering to, you know, once or twice a week, just try it and see how she's looking in it until it starts to look better. Once again, there's no point in doing something badly. That's the thing I need to impress upon everybody. You know, once you understand the order that things have to take place with a horse, you know, it simplifies your process and also is a lot safer. So we must get one thing before we get the other. Just like with lunging, we have to teach the horse to move out on the lunge line before we can get anything else going. So whether they're breaking into a canter or whatever they're doing, it doesn't make any difference till we just teach them to stay out away from us, because we can't control them until they will stay out and actually push into that outside rein. Remember, correct lunging is like riding. The whip is your leg and you have contact with the reins. Now that was a little better stretch there. Now, but once again, not quite as active and not as good as what we saw in the first section. So I was really happy when you sent me that second section, because I could really see you were really getting there in that. And perhaps this process of looking at the two sections yourself, you were saying you were maybe afraid of pushing her too much and making her go a little too fast. Well, you know, don't be afraid of that at this moment. As long as she's stretching down, that's good. You know, generally speaking, in the beginning, they're going to go a little fast just to get them activated. But as they start to work over their backs, we see it slow back down, but the rhythm of the gait doesn't change. In other words, we get a big, deep stretch with a big stride. Once again, she's starting to stretch a little better here, but once again, you can see how inactive her hind legs are kind of falling out behind her here, because she's not active enough and swinging over her back the way you get her in the first section. That's a little better there, but still just a little inactive. So once again here, you know, not bad, but just not quite as good as you had it in that first section. So my advice to you is when she is hollow like that, when she comes up, the only thing you can do is send them forward. Now, even if it's a little quick, don't worry about that. It'll slow down once she starts to stretch and get into the contact. But if we keep going along at this speed, she won't really develop. Because once again, you can see how short the stride is. Her back legs are not even tracking anywhere near the track of the front feet. It almost looks like her hind legs kind of fall out behind with each stride because she's not really pushing off the ground. She's still more pulling with the shoulders. And that's something that everyone needs to get an eye for. Is your horse pulling with its shoulders, or is it coming through and lifting its body and projecting itself up with the use of the hind legs? That's what we're looking for. That's what lifts us into the air and gives us that lovely feeling of almost like flying when we're on a correctly trained horse. So very, very good work on this. Great job on that first piece of tape. That's what we want to do, is get her looking like that every day. So whatever it was that you did differently, maybe it was that you lunged her without the side reins. I'm not sure. Or you just asked her to just be a little more active. I have a feeling that's what you did there. That's what it looked like. So in that case, use that first tape as your guide, and that's where you want to get her to each time. And know that, even though she is a mare, that won't make any difference. She will develop her top line, and she'll be able to collect in time. Though, as I said, once again, she will never have a really high head and neck position because that's not the way her neck comes out of her body. We can't change the horse's nature or what nature has given the horse. We have to work with what we have. But fortunately, the back end is what we ride, not the neck. So the neck makes very little difference whether it's up or down or whatever the case may be. It's what the hindquarters are doing that's important in the part that we ride. Will Faerber from Art to Ride, great job. I look forward to seeing you next time.